In this session, we want to discuss division of polynomials. And we're going to start off by talking about long division first. Alright. So let's look at an example. You're asked to divide 5x squared plus 6x minus 8 by, let's see, x plus 2. Okay. Alright, so the way we want to set this up according to long division, x plus 2 we go here, 5x squared plus 6x minus 8 go there. And so now, just a point of order with as relates to vocabulary, this will be considered, it's not writing that well, hold on. This will be considered our divisor, D-I-V-I-S, or divisor. This would be considered our dividend. Alright. Rewrite this again. Clean this up. D-I-V-I-S-O-R. Okay, so what we're dividing by is our divisor. The term or the polynomial that we're actually trying to divide is our dividend, and then our answer that we come up with, which we will write up here, is called your quotient. Alright, so your answer for division is considered the quotient. Okay, so we have our problem set up, and we focus on the lead term in our divisor and the lead term in our dividend, and we're trying to say basically what times x will give us 5x squared, or another way to look at it is if I took this x and said 5x squared divided by x, 5x squared divided by x, what would that give me? Well, that x would disappear, that knocked that 2 down to 1, and that'd be a 5x. So in other words, 5x times x would give me 5x squared. So I say 5x. And notice I wrote my 5x above the x's, not above the x squareds, but above the x's. So 5x times x gives me 5x squared. 5x also gets multiplied by the 2. Okay, so that gives you a plus 10x. So you have that now. Alright, 5x squared plus 10x. Now, just like when you learn long division back in grade school, once you write this out, now you're taught to subtract, and by subtracting we change our signs. So now this positive 5x becomes a negative, this positive 10x becomes a negative, positive 5x squared, becomes a negative, positive 10x becomes a negative. Alright, so now these will cancel because they're opposite signs. 6 minus 10 is a negative 4x, 6x minus 10x because it's negative now. Minus 10x is a negative 4x, and we bring down the negative 8. Alright, so we bring negative 8 down. So now we have that. So now we're looking at the negative 4x being our lead term, still looking at this x as our lead term. So what times x will give us a negative 4x, or in other words, take a negative 4x and divide it by x. X is a cancel, tell you just have a negative 4. So I need a negative 4, and negative 4 is a constant because it doesn't have a variable attached to it. Alright, so because the constant, I write it over my constant term. Notice there, minus 8 is a constant. All my constants are lined up, all my x's are lined up, x squared is lined up. So now my negative 4 gets multiplied by my x, gives me a negative 4x. Negative 4 times my 2 gives me a negative 8. We do our subtraction. Subtraction is going to cause our signs to change. So that's going to become a plus. That's going to become a plus. Alright, and so now that'll cancel and that cancels, and you end up with an answer of 5x minus 4, which is the quotient. Alright. Let's look at another one, excuse me. Yeah, let's erase this over here. Okay. Let's do divide 2x squared minus 3x plus 1 by x minus 5. Alright, so we set that up. X minus 5, 2x squared minus 3x plus 1. Alright, what times x gives me 2x squared, or 2x squared divided by x would just be 2x. So 2x goes here over the x's, 2x times x, 2x squared, 2x times a negative 5 is a negative 10x. Alright, we change our signs. So we change our signs, we get a negative and a plus. Okay, that causes these to cancel. Negative 3 plus 10 is a positive 7x. Bring down to plus 1. So now that's going to be a plus 7. 7 times x gives me 7x. 7 times a negative 5 gives me a negative 35. Alright, now I do my subtraction, changes the sign. Changes the sign. Those cancel. Alright, and this right here is a 1 plus 35, which gives me a 36. Now I've filled up all of the spaces of my dividend. I've covered them up. There aren't any more spaces to the right. So now basically what we're saying is this 36 is a remainder. Okay? The 36 is a remainder, but the way we write remainders, or the proper form that they wish for you to write the remainders, by saying, since it's a positive 36, you say plus 36 over the divisor, which is your x minus 5. Alright, and that's how you indicate a remainder, by saying what you actually got for the remainder over the divisor. So writing it in a fraction form. Alright, if this was a negative 36, right here we'd write a minus sign. So there you go. That's how you do a problem that had a remainder. Okay, now let's look at a problem like this. Let's say we have t minus 2 and t to the third minus 8. Alright, one of the things I want you to be real mindful of when you're doing division is to always make sure, whether it be the divisor, dividend, whatever the case may be, always make sure that every place is accounted for. So when we look at this particular problem, alright, we see we have t to the first and no t, which is a constant, so this is fine. But when we look here in the dividend, we see we have a t to the third, and we don't see any t squares, we don't see any basic t's. We go from a t to the third to a constant, so we're missing two places. So we help ourselves if we take this and make sure we account for all our places. So turn it into t to the third plus 0t squared. And the reason why I wrote 0t squared is because there are no t squares, but at least this gives me the opportunity to write out this place for my t squares. Alright, now I don't have any t's, so I would write 0t. Now t to the third, t to the second, t to the first, t to the 0 are just our constants, and we have our constant in our problem, which was minus 8. So there it is. Okay, so I want you to make a habit of anytime you're doing division to make sure all of the places are accounted for. Okay, write them out as zeros if they aren't present. So now I want a t to the third. Using this t, that means t squared. Alright, so t squared times t gives you a t to the third. T squared times a negative 2 is a negative 2t squared. Alright, subtract, change the sign, change the sign. Okay, these cancel, So that gives you a positive 2t squared. Bring down what's next, which is a 0t. So now I want a 2t squared, so that's going to be plus 2t. Notice how my t squares are lined up. My t's are lining up. Alright, so that gives me my 2t squared minus 4t. Alright, change my sign. Okay, so now these cancel. Gives me a 4t. Bring down what's next, which is a minus 8 on a 4t, so I say plus 4. 4 times 4t. Alright, 4 times the negative 2 is negative 8. Okay. Change my signs. And cancel, no remainder. So our answer, there you have it, t squared plus 2t plus 4. That would be our quotient. That would be our quotient there. Okay. So that's pretty much how we would conduct long division. Okay. Now, outside of long division, there's also the ability to divide using another method, which we call synthetic division. Alright, synthetic division. Now a couple of things are synthetic, and it's based on the divisor. Alright, these are issues with the divisor. Alright, your divisor has to be in the form of x minus k. Alright, so that you're looking at binomial. Right, this is a binomial, one term, two terms, first degree. Alright, so your divisor has to be a first degree. In other words, you don't see any exponents. You don't see any exponents. Okay, and that your x has a coefficient of positive 1. Alright, x has a coefficient of positive 1. Okay. Alright, those are the things we have to be careful of when we're doing synthetic division. Alright, so let's take a look. First problem we have would be what is set up as x minus 1. Well, I'll go ahead, just write it. Alright, x minus 1 and 4x to the 4th minus 2x to the 3rd, alright, plus 6x minus 1. Alright, 4x to the 4th minus 2x to the 3rd plus 6x minus 1. We're asked to divide that. Now, using synthetic, first of all, before we can use synthetic, we have to check our divisor, right? Our divisor is in the form of x minus k. Yes, it's in the form of x minus k. Here's our x, here's our minus, that's our k. Okay, so in this case, k is just 1. It is not negative 1, it's just 1. X minus k. So k is 1. So we have our k. So there we go. Alright, so we write our k over here to the side. Now, it is a binomial, right? Because there's one term, there's a second term, first degree, right? There aren't any exponents. Our x is to the first power, first degree, and our x has the coefficient of positive 1. We understand it to be a positive 1 right here in front of this x. So we've checked off all 4 of these, and it fits. Okay, so our k is right here, Alright, sorry for that. Had a little meeting, had to address an issue I had to address. Alright, where are we? Okay, so we have this one right here, which comes from our k, x minus k. In this case, there's our k, that 1. So that's where that comes from. And now here, we're going to write a 4. We're going to write a negative 2. We're going to write a 0. We're going to write a 6. And then we're going to write a negative 1. Alright, so let's see. 4 comes from there. Negative 2 comes from there. Well, where does the 0 come from? Well, as I told you before, we want to always account for every place. I have an x to the 4, an x to the 3rd, then it goes to x, so I missed the x squares. So that would be like saying plus 0x squared, so there's my 0. Alright, then my x's, there's my x, and then there's my constants. So that's where those numbers come from, right there. Alright, so now at this point, once we have everything set up, then we go about taking the first number, bringing it down. Once we bring that number down, we take our k, multiply by that number. 4 times 1 is 4. I write my answer right here. Now I combine these numbers. Negative 2 plus 4, negative 2 and a positive 4 gives me a positive 2. Alright, so now I multiply that and that. That 1 times that 2 is 2. Put that answer there. 0 and 2 is 2. Alright, 1 times this 2 is 2. 6 and 2, 8. Right? So now I have my 8. 1 and 8 is 8. Negative 1 and 8 gives me a positive 7. Alright, so I have all of my places filled in, right? Every column is filled in with an answer. Now here's the other part. When you have your final answer, which this down here is your answer, this line down here, you read from right to left now. Okay, you don't read from left to right anymore, you read from right to left. This first column represents your remainder. Then you have your constant. Then you have your x squared, x to the 3rd, so on and so forth, counting to the left. Alright, but you start at the right, count to the left. Okay, so your answer then would be 4x to the 3rd plus 2x squared plus 2x plus 8. Alright, with a remainder of 7. So we say plus 7 over x minus 1. Alright. Alright, so there's our final answer for this problem. And again, that's how we use synthetic division. So let's look at another one. Let's look at one like, let's see. Alright, let's try one like this. Say x squared plus 9x plus 18 divided by x plus 3. Okay, so your form, well, before you put in the form, you write x plus 3, x squared plus your 9x plus your 18. Alright, now remember we have to check our divisor. Is it in the form of x minus k? It is. It doesn't look like it is. If in this case, most of y'all would say k is 3, but k is not 3 because it's got to be in the form of x minus k. Alright, and there's a plus sign, and the only way this becomes a plus sign instead of a minus sign is because it's really saying x minus k. Alright, so x minus, and this is now my k, a negative 3, and that's the only way this becomes a positive sign, a plus sign, as opposed to our minus sign, because the k has to be negative, because the minus sign that we have here and the negative sign is what forms the plus sign. Alright, so x plus 3 is really like saying x minus a negative 3, where there's my x, there's my minus, and there's my k. Okay, so in this case, instead of having a 1 over here, I'll now have a negative 3 outside. Okay, and then write my numbers. Well, this is x squared, so that's 1x squared, 9x, and 18. Bring my first number down. There's my 1. Negative 3 times that, so negative 3. That's 6. 9 minus 3 is 6. Negative 3 times 6 is a negative 18. That gives me 0. So that tells me my remainder is 0, so I don't have a remainder. That's my constant. That's my x. So I have x plus 6 for an answer. 1x, there it is. 6 is my constant, there it is. No remainder. Alright. So that's how synthetic division works. Okay. So we will now conclude our session on division at this time.